Hey everybody, this is your brother, Narada, Michael Walden. Welcome to All In, my podcast where we break down music, life, and love, interviews and conversations. Let's get into it. Free, free, set them free. Free, free, set them free.
That's right.
How are you, great man? How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, man. Everything is good. And yourself?
Really good, Omar. Very happy to be talking to you.
Oh,
And
man.
I reflect back on being in my home in the basement in Queens, and
Yes.
you would come there when you were little,
That's
and
right.
you would be so smooth. Your technique when you were little was
Wow.
incredibly smooth, Omar. To the
Wow.
point that I would be just like taken by your ability, as
Wow.
at a
Wow.
young age.
Thanks,
And I
man.
really think that's the testimony to God's gift in you is how smooth you are at playing the drums and
Mm,
and everything you do has an element of
mm.
smoothness when you sing, in your production, in your arrangement. I listen to your recordings. In particular, a song I like a lot is "Take My Heart." I think it's called "Take My Heart."
Oh, yes,
It's so
yes.
beautiful. The hook again,
Thank you.
smooth and beautiful.
Thank you,
So I just
man.
want to really thank you, man, for how you've elevated the music through your
Thank
heart. And I want to
you.
start, if you don't mind, asking you about, your beginnings in Queens, where so many
Ah,
geniuses have come from. Here you are.
wow. Yeah, that neighborhood was absolutely incredible. And when I think about the people that I grew up with and I grew up around, it's just really, really mind blowing. Well, my dad was a musician, and he and his family moved to the Queens area probably in the early 1950s. I was born in '59, um, and my memory of the music in that neighborhood at a very young age. I mean, John Coltrane lived down the block. And I remember my mom and dad were friends with he and Naima. And I remember going to their house as a kid and Train answering the door with a horn around his neck. Um, it was pretty amazing. Roy Haynes lived in our neighborhood. I remember driving down the street with my dad, and Roy would be mowing his lawn and the kids would be out there playing. There's Roy. I mean, it was just like that's who was in the neighborhood. People like Weldon Irvine. Then my contemporaries, Marcus Miller, Don Blackman, Bernard Wright, um, the amazing Lenny White, also
Mhm, mhm.
from that neighborhood. And he was one of our neighborhood heroes because, we were able to look at Lenny and see what was possible.
Yes.
When I remember Lenny's work on like a Santana record back in the early '70s and his work with Azteca. But then when Return to Forever happened, we were like, whoa, this is incredible. Our hometown homie
Yes.
is making some stuff happen out there, and we can all follow that beautiful energy of what was possible.
Yes. I
You
don't
know
know
what
if,
I
if,
mean?
if, if people around the world know this, but I mean, in the Queens area, so much was happening. I
Oh
was
yeah.
there because of Guru Sri Chinmoy and Mahavishnu
Yeah.
John McLaughlin. That's
Yes.
where they were in
That's right.
Queens, okay,
That's
Parsons
right.
Boulevard. All right.
Oh
But
yeah.
because I'm there, then I meet Howie Great, then I meet Ronnie Head Drayton, then I meet Marcus Miller, Lenny White, you, Tony Thompson's out there who became the great drummer for a power station
Chic and
and Chic.
chic and
See what I
chic and
mean?
powerful.
So I mean,
Exactly.
Don Blackman, uh,
It was remarkable.
Winky Wright, whatever his what Wright,
Yeah,
Bernard
yeah,
Wright.
Winky. That's
I'm,
right.
I
Bernard
mean,
and
it's just
Winky.
phenomenal what's out there.
No,
And then all the rap that came out from LL Cool J,
that's right, man. That's right.
Run DMC. I mean, so
Run
much is
DMC,
in
LL.
Queens, New York, man.
That's right, man. Don't forget Tribe Called Quest.
See,
You
that's what I'm
know.
saying. So it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you're pointing out the multi-genre influence because the information that was in the air just fed creativity in all of these different styles and genres. The guys that grew up in this neighborhood didn't feel any sense of boundary with what was happening creatively,
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible. Another guy that was a mentor to many of us was Weldon Irvine. I didn't know if you got a chance to meet Weldon Irvine back in the day.
I don't know. Tell me more.
Well, Weldon was the co-writer of Young, Gifted, and Black with Nina Simone.
Okay.
And Questlove did the film that Questlove did of the amazing concert in Harlem.
Yes, of course.
Well, in that scene, you'll see Nina Simone with young Weldon Irvine, her MD, playing keyboards, and the drummer was Don Elias.
Okay.
So if you go back and look at that film, young Don Elias, Weldon Irvine with Nina Simone, but Weldon mentored a bunch of us.
Okay.
And he had a band. I used to lovingly call his band Weldon's Ark because he had two of everything. 2 drummers, 2 bass players, 2 piano players, two guitarists. He had 2 of everything. And we would go around and play these really amazing gigs. But what you're reminding me also of the restaurant, I one of the places where I would see everybody was I think it was called Anam Brahma.
Of course, that's Mahavishnu's restaurant.
Yes, and I remember going there a lot with my dad.
Okay.
My dad used to love to go there, and we would see the guru there a lot, and he would hang out with us, and all of the musicians that used to gather. I remember going there a lot with Barry's son, John Johnson.
That's right, another one who then Corrado, my guitar player, hooked up with and recorded a lot in Italy and around the world. So Barry Johnson, he's phenomenal too.
Oh my God! I remember that band was called Nova.
That's right. Yeah. See,
and it was awesome. So many beautiful memories. But I do remember those days of coming to your place and being really inspired by what you were doing, and it was so fun and so joyful to observe how you were navigating the industry at this time, and it was just incredible. Okay, got this weird pop-up on my screen. Let me get rid of that. Yeah, so and one of those times I was actually with Barry.
Okay.
And I remember coming over, man.
Okay.
But this was fun stuff, and I was so happy when you got the gig with Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you.
That was just like it blew us away. And I don't know if you remember, but you invited me to one of the rehearsals at SIR. And I came in, it was SIR on 54th Street, right upstairs from Studio 54. And I remember walking in the room and I remember seeing Gail Moran there.
Yes.
Singing and playing keyboards.
Yes.
And yourself and the string section, and to actually witness the formation of it. It blew my mind. So when the record came out, I was thrilled. It was just really, it was phenomenal, man.
How old would you have been?
Well, I think we're talking 74, 75 right now, right?
All right.
So I would have been like 16.
Okay, I thought so. When I first met you were about 16 years old.
Yeah, it was about 16. And I'll never forget that. And I remember going to SIR and being in that rehearsal and hearing that band in that room, being in the room with y'all, man.
That's right.
It was amazing.
Well, I'm going to say it again. For all the drummers in the world, excuse me, for all the drummers in the world, all the musicians in the world, you may know of how genius Omar Hakim is, but I want to say to you that he truly is the genius. You have always been so insightful, so smooth, so inventive, and I have to just give it to you. You know, some players are just natural, incredibly natural. Like we think of Willie Mays as being a natural baseball player, the natural one, right? That's how I think of you, incredibly natural to the point of just so advanced in your youth when I met you at 16 years old like that. Now you say your dad was a musician, so I want to know more about how you became that natural. Who is your father? Who is the musician that you're getting this lifeline?
Well, my dad, Hassan Hakim, left Birmingham, Alabama, his hometown, when he was just 15 or 16 years old.
Okay.
And this story is incredible because apparently Louis Armstrong and his big band went through Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm guessing this would have had, because my dad was born in like 1925. So this would have had to have been like 1940 or 41. He's 15 or 16 years old. The Louis Armstrong big band pulls into Birmingham, and the trombone player is sick as a dog. He can't play. And my dad was there with his horn. And Louis spotted him and asked him if he knew the music. And my dad knew all of that music because he was a huge fan of Louis Armstrong. He could read. And so he gets up on stage and he just plays with the band at 15, 16 years old. And Louis took him on the road with him after that. He left home at 16 years old, left Birmingham, Alabama. My grandparents died when he was young.
I see.
My grandfather was a Baptist minister in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow.
Reverend King. But he died, like I said, very young. The oldest sister, Emma, was the one taking care of the 7 kids. So I guess for my dad to leave at that point was maybe one less mouth she had to worry about. So he's gone on the road with Louis Armstrong. And then from there, it became gigs with Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Jimmy Lunsford. He kind of went through quite a few big bands.
Playing the trombone?
Playing trombone.
Wow.
And
okay.
It's funny because somebody showed me a book. There was a book it's like a chronological history of Louis Armstrong's bands, and my dad's name is in the book. His name before he changed it was Alfonso King.
Okay, good. I'm glad you told me. Alfonso King. Okay.
Alfonso King. And somebody showed me the book recently. There's your dad. I was like, wow, that's awesome. So, I was born into this jazz house, really, when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The sounds that were playing at the time I arrived, it's vivid memories of Miles and Train and Max Roach and Clifford Brown and Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers with the very young saxophonist named Wayne Shorter in his band. And and the sounds of Kind of Blue on the record player. My mom loved the Miles Davis Kind of Blue album. So these were the sounds that I was hearing. But then it was also interesting too, because, the 60s was a serious convergence of all kinds of music. Radio was exploding. The British invasion was happening. Rock and roll was happening. The convergence of soul and rock and Motown and everything from B.B. King to Howlin' Wolf to the Beatles. This is what was in my ear as a kid, and I loved all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like a sponge. I couldn't get enough of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think growing up in this kind of environment, I never experienced or looked at music with a boundary mindset.
I know. I can feel that about you. Are you Aquarius? Are you Aquarius?
Yes.
I thought you were. I remember you telling me that from years ago.
Wow.
The water bear, the water server, and open air, open.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's nothing for me, if I think about what the business model was for my career, it was mainly to have fun.
Yes.
To stay creative, to allow myself creative experience. I think my main goal was to just become a worthy collaborator to the people that would bring me into their musical circle. Give us a little trajectory now of like we're talking about Queens. What happened to really open the doors for you, and then kind of give us like as you see it. Okay,
the A to B to C.
Dig it. Yeah. Okay, so I started playing around age 5. I got my first snare drum, like around 5 or 6. My dad bought me this Ludwig snare drum. I still have it. In fact, I found it recently and I started using it again. It's so nice, man. And then he started like getting me pieces of the drum set. And I did my first gigs with him. Actually, my first gig with my dad. He's like, "You're ready." I was 10 years old, and he billed it. His band was called the Nomads, Hassan and the Nomads. And he had a little tagline featuring little Omar, the 10-year-old drum sensation, or something really embarrassing like this, which I was like, "Oh no!" But my dad saw it. It was like he's in his mind, I was ready, and so between age 10 and like 14, I was gigging with my dad and the Nomads. But during the same time, I met Denzel Miller, this incredible keyboard player. I met Donald Blackman during this time.
Donald Blackman, yes, we know him. Absolutely.
And so I started playing with the local funk and rock bands. I met Ronnie Drayton at this time.
Now you got to pause, because folks know Ronnie as a guitarist, but Ronnie, when I first saw him in the basement of Howie Great, was beating the hell out of the funk drum. And I mean like rock style, loud.
Oh, yeah.
He was a hell of a drummer. I actually saw him more as a drummer. Then I realized he was a guitar player. But I thought he was the drummer. Because
exactly.
He was so natural again. You see what I mean?
It was amazing, because I think what happened was he fell in love with Jimi Hendrix, and Hendrix just flipped him out.
Yeah.
And then he became like a Hendrix disciple.
Yes.
But Howie Great was another one. There was a band that Howie was in called the Fireballs. And they were like the kings of the local scene in terms of like the local bands. Mm-hmm. They were like really inspiring and really powerful, and the Great Brothers. It was over the top when you would go hear the Fireballs. It was over the top, and Howie was just freaking us all out back then. Mm-hmm. So I love that you mentioned Howie Great, because he was a huge inspiration to a lot of the young drummers in our neighborhood.
Yes.
And we would follow him around and get our minds blown and go back and practice. It was really wonderful.
Well, I have to thank Howie Great, because through Howie and in Frank's drum shop, the professional drum shop in New York, he brought in with him T.M. Stevens, the great bass player. That's how I met T.M. through Howie.
Did not know that.
Howie was doing a play called Your Arm is Too Short to Box with God. And the bass player was T.M. Stevens. This is how I met the tall TM with the long braids, And then when I play with TM, I'm just floored how incredible TM Stevens was. A friend of Howie Great. So these worlds keep merging.
And let me say something about that. That show, Your Arm's Too Short to Box with God, was my first Broadway gig, because Howie said to me, "Omar, I need a sub." So he says, "You come down to the show. I need you to learn this show."
Yeah.
So I go down there and I sit under Howie, TM, and I'm watching him play it. And then he said, "Next week, you've got to do this." I'm like, "What?" So that was my first Broadway gig. I remember going to the theater the afternoon. Howie wasn't there. I walk up, there's a union guy standing at the door. Remember back in the day, the union guys would be at the Broadway show doors looking for union cards. "Where you going, kid?" I said, "I'm." He said, "No, you're not. You don't have a union card. Go to the union right now and sign up, and then come back." And I went to the union, the local 802, got my card, and went back. And then I played the show that day.
I love it.
But again, Howie Great. Mm-hmm. Howie Great was the one that got me my first Broadway gig, really. And you're right, T.M. Stevens was just like, it was over the top. And so I love what you're talking about right now is important too, because now we're talking about the convergence of not only the R&B and the jazz guys, but that community of rock musicians.
Yes.
That were also from that area. When you talk about people like T.M. Stevens and Howie and Ronnie Drayton,
and the guitar player, who
Eddie
played,
Martinez.
He played with Eddie
Martinez.
Yes,
with Mother Night.
He was out there too.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and Eddie was from the Bronx, but
okay.
But there was a band called Mother Night.
Okay.
and it was like a beautiful convergence of cats from the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. And there were many days spent at Edwin Birdsong's house in Hollis. Remember Edwin Birdsong?
I do.
And he was another mentor. And I remember hanging out there with Ronnie Drayton. We would be jamming in his living room, and anybody could show up at Edwin Birdsong's house. And one day we were there, and the cats from Graham Central Station came by. Larry wasn't there that day, but Herschel was there, and the singer, whose nickname was Chocolate, I don't remember her real name. Mm-hmm. She was there. A couple of the other cats, and we were jamming. And so it was interesting for me because I was getting this steady diet of jazz over here, funk over here, rock over here. I'm saying yes to all of it. I want it all. You know what I mean? And there's another band that I can't forget in the neighborhood that I also played with. It was called Jack Sass. And Sass was like one of the more popular black rock bands in Queens. Mike Murphy, The System.
Yes, Mick Murphy. Mick Murphy. Yes, exactly. Brilliant.
He was one of the lead singers in
my system.
Exactly. Yeah, also, Double Z, Liz Chisholm, the bass player. Okay. The incredible Vic Vaughn, guitarist.
Okay.
So many people went through that band too. And so it was like school happening on a lot of different levels, playing gigs. I was really active as a youngster, just trying to soak up as much as I could. And it was Denzel Miller.
Yes.
Who took me on my first tour.
Okay.
In 1974, 15 years old. Denzel was in a band called Creative Funk. They had a regional hit called Ready Made Family. It was like a big R&B hit. And so they were touring around, and they had a rehearsal studio right on Merrick Boulevard, around the corner from my Aunt Maggie and Uncle Mel's house. And I used to go out there and just sit out there and listen to them rehearse. Barry Sunjohn too. One day I went out there, and Denzel was in the garage, kind of with his Farfisa organ and his guitar, just kind of practicing. And he told me about a show, a jam session that was going to happen at a local club. And I was like, I'll be there, because it was going to be Val Burke on bass from Mother Night, right. Arnold Ramsey, the drummer from Mother Night, Denzel Miller, and a few other people. And when I get to the club, for some reason, Arnold didn't show up. I think he had car trouble. Now, Denzel hadn't heard me play yet, but I show up at the club with my dad, 15 years old. And I said, well, I'll go home and get my drums, and I'll come back and play with you guys. Mm-hmm. And it was really funny, because I think in their mind, they thought, okay, let the kid go and get his drums. At least we'll have a drum set here. And then we'll have a jam session. But when I come back with the drums and I sit down to play with them, everything that they called out, I knew how to play. Mm-hmm. Whether it was a bebop thing or a funk thing. And that was when Denzel and I really became close. And he took me on tour. And that first band, Eddie Martinez on guitar.
Yes.
Denzel, a bass player named Larry Smith, who was one of the early hip hop producers with Run DMC and Russell Simmons and the Def Jams. Because Larry Smith was a really creative producer, but a great bass player.
Okay. And
we were backing up a guy named Jay Mason, summer of '74, toured around America, opening for like Hall & Oates, and we were opening for this band on the West Coast called Cold Blood.
I know Cold Blood. You gotta pause. In my life, there's a drummer with Cold Blood that changed my life. A lot of folks won't know him, but his name is Sandy McGee. He's on the Sisyphus album.
Dude, that is Sandy McGee was so incredible. And it's funny, you're right. A lot of people don't know about Sandy. I talk about Sandy all the time. And I tell people, if you haven't heard it, you need to go back to that album and listen to the song Shop Talk.
Yes, sir. And the whole album. Too many people. Yeah. The guy had something that I had to have. Which was really like we all heard funk and all that, yeah? But somehow this guy stumbled on like another way to kind of break it out. And he was so clean with it.
It was remarkable.
And so sharp with it.
Yeah.
So street stank with it. It was like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? I had to have it.
You had to have it. And once again, it was Howie Great that turned me on to Sandy.
There you go again. Howie.
Right? Howie. So he turned me on to Sandy.
Okay.
And I asked Garibaldi about Sandy.
Okay.
Because a few years ago, we were on somehow on a call somewhere. I think I went to see them play at the Brooklyn Bowl. Mm-hmm. And I said, Dave, what happened to Sandy?
Yes.
And he says, Omar, what was incredible about Sandy was that most drummers played with their hi-hat over the snare drum. Mm-hmm. Sandy played with his hi-hat lower than the snare drum, almost under the snare drum, which gave him a whole different way of dealing with the pocket and how he would deal with the cymbals and the patterns. And I was like, that's interesting. Just the physicality of that tweak changed his approach and what he was able to do. It blew my mind when I heard him play. So to be in a band where I was getting exposed to these people on the road, even that band, the Jay Mason Group, we also opened for Albert King.
Okay.
Blues guitarist on the East Coast.
Yes.
So, that was like, if you want to learn how to play a shuffle properly, you got to see the Albert King band and the way that drummer was throwing down a shuffle. Mm-hmm. Like the serious blues.
Who was that? Who was the drummer?
I don't remember. It was so long ago. Unfortunately, I don't remember who that was, but I do remember watching them every night. And we were playing in those venues with the chicken wire in front and people throwing stuff. And
But see, this is why I want to talk about, because here we are in a day and age of YouTube, where you can watch all the great drummers around the world with all the chops, just Chop City, which is a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. I've never seen anything like it. Like the little girl out of wherever she's out in Europe and out drums, and she's ingenious with a double kick and all that. Okay, fine. But let me just say this. These drummers you're speaking about, who understood how to make a club swing with a chicken wire around the club. I learned more in that kind of setting. And the pressure that's in that setting, that you had to play that groove right, to make the people move right, to make the cat who was up front feel it right. That's the education that many will never have in that regard. I have to just say that. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why you're so great. You're a natural, but your experiences being around those things that are just like, just priceless.
No, it is.
I have to say that to you.
Yeah, no, this is real, because I was making a living backing up singers. I was making a living playing in R&B bands. I was playing grooves. Yeah, there were drum solos, but that wasn't the main dish. The main dish was, and I remember somebody saying this to me, it was almost like an old kind of swing saying too, never lose the dance floor. Never lose the dance floor.
That's it. Yeah.
And I remember, great lesson. This is a hilarious story, because I was feeling my oats. I'm getting my chops together, and there was a block party near Don Blackman's place at the Jamaica Projects, and the kids would be out there jamming the bands and everything. So if you wanted to go jam, you'd ask the band, "Can you get some run? Hey, can I get some run?" Yeah, sure, man. So they were dancing. I think they were playing a James Brown groove, and everybody was partying and dancing. And I was like, "Oh man, I want to do that." And so when, the drummer finally finished and he handed me the sticks, and I sat down and I started playing all of the stuff, I must have been like around 13 or whatever. And I'm, play a bar of a beat, and then I start going nuts, and then I play. And so finally the band was getting quieter and quieter. And this kid in the audience, this girl goes, "Let Mikey play again." And then Mikey came back and sat down and went, and everybody started dancing again.
Yeah, man. Let Mikey play.
Let Mikey play again. Because what? I lost the dance floor.
Yeah. Okay.
I was like, that was the most incredible lesson for me. Because nobody was interested in my paraflower flabberdabbledibbles that day.
Well, I have to say this. Let's zoom forward to this. Free something free. You put the funk and the stank and the soul on Sting. Oh yes, you did, man. And you broke out with that movie, Bring Out the Night, whatever it's called. I mean, that's phenomenal. We have to stop there for a second because what you learned in your upbringing, Sting admired. Because you have it all. You can play the jazz, you can play the hard funk, and you're a rock impresario.
Thank you, man.
You got it all going, man. So speak about that now. Let's just go forward a bit. Say what you want to say.
Well, I was a huge fan of the Police and Sting. Absolutely love that band. I first heard them when I was in high school. I was going to music and art high school myself, Marcus Miller, all of those guys. And so I just fell in love with that raw sound of the Police. And I still have those records, the first ones on vinyl. I still have them.
That's right. Stuart Copeland, everybody.
Stuart Copeland, man, killing it. Killing it. And it was interesting too because there was a DJ in New York named Frankie Crocker. You remember?
Of course. He's famous. The famous Frankie Crocker, man. I met him many times in his booth.
Of course,
He wear a fur coat and everything.
Oh yeah, exactly. He played a lot of your music, but he was one of the first cats at a black music station to play the Police. And I remember they had a song called "Voices Inside My Head." You remember this?
Go ahead. I want to hear.
And he used that as like a bumper in and out of different things. But I was like, wow, Frankie Crocker's playing the Police on WLS. Like it really blew my mind. But fast forward, I had already been doing some rock records and different things before I got with Sting. And I want to say that I had just finished work on the Dire Straits Brothers in Arms record.
Wow, brother. Go.
Money for Nothing and those tracks, So Far Away. Really lovely record. And I got called in on that because of this amazing engineer from Power Station. I know you know him, Neil Dorfsman.
Yes, I do. Although I worked more with Bob Clearmountain.
Yes.
In the same house would be all these great people.
Exactly. Yes. There were all these incredible engineers at Power Station. Mm-hmm. And so Neil was working on the Dire Straits record, and their drummer had fallen out. And so he recommended that Knopfler called me. And that's how I ended up on the Dire Straits record.
Okay, now, Omar, I have to tell you, I did not realize you were playing on the Money for Nothing.
Oh, you didn't?
I did not know that was you playing on that record.
That's me.
Congratulations, man. What a hell of a hit, man. What a hell of a hit. And quite frankly, that record stopped MTV completely. It was all over MTV.
It was.
That was a huge, huge record.
It was, man.
And video.
And around this time, I also did 2 albums with David Bowie.
Okay, yeah, go about that. Yeah.
The Let's Dance album blew David up. And
speak about that. Can you just pause? We're going so fast. What do you want to say about Let's Dance? What do you want to say about that?
Well, Let's Dance, Niall and I, again, I'm going to go back a little and then work it back forward again. I met Niall when I was around 11 or 12 years old at the Jazzmobile Workshop in Harlem.
Yes.
We were all going there because you could get free lessons.
Yes.
And they had the Jazzmobile, which would go around Queens, and they would present free jazz shows in the hood. And you could see like everybody from Rahsaan Roland Kirk to Horace Silver. It was like a truck with a stage, and it would go all over New York City. But then they had this workshop, and I remember being there and meeting Niall. And then Niall and I had a group that played in Great Adventure Amusement Park, like a band shell cover band. So Niall and I go way back. So when she blew up, I ran into him again, and then he started producing a bunch of records. And then I was on the road with Weather Report. He says, Omar, when are you going to be home? I got to do a record with Bowie. Can you do this album? I'm like, dude, I love David Bowie. I'm totally there. I'll be home next week. I get back home. The first song when I walk into the Power Station that we cut was Let's Dance. That was the first thing we cut. and that was the vibe of, and I played on most of that record: Modern Love, China Girl, Ricochet, Let's Dance. I'm like I said, I'm on the majority of the songs on that record.
Was that Bob Clearmountain?
That was Clear Mountain.
Now we got to pause again. Tell me about how Bob Clearmountain helped you get that sound, because that guy is a scientist.
No, he is a sound scientist. There's no question about it. It was the house drum set at Power Station, which was a lovely Ludwig kit.
Okay.
Very well maintained, beautiful. I would just bring like my cymbals and sticks because the drums were so amazing. And there was a Ludwig Black Beauty snare there that Bob had kind of had pre-tuned it and kind of got it in a place that he knew what it was going to do in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember kind of hitting the drum, thinking to myself, this is very different from like the typical, tape all over the drums, or like, the hydraulic drum head, or, it was wide open, super ringy, but kind of tuned low. And I was like, okay, interesting. I started tweaking it, but then he said, okay, don't tweak it anymore. Leave it right there. He said, just leave it right there. It sounds good in here.
Yeah.
And then he came out and he taped a little tiny Countryman mic to the edge of the snare.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's that for? And he goes, you'll see.
Yes.
And then he had two mics that it was like a 57 and maybe an AKG 451 that were taped together, just to kind of make sure the phase was perfect. He had them both on one stand with this little Countryman mic. And I remember we're tracking this thing and it's grooving, Carmine Rojas on bass, and we're working the pattern out. And I go back in the studio, and what I heard in the speakers was very different from what I heard in my headphones, because Bob had taken that little tiny mic and used it as a device to open up a gate that he sent a overdriven reverb sound into. And so this idea of the gated reverb snare wasn't a patch that you could just pull up on a box and just hit program number 3 and there it is. Bob Clearmountain basically patched together several things to create this gated reverb. And when I heard it, I was like, whoa, that is crazy. That sound is like, it's over the top.
Yes. And I have to pause again because people in the world have to know at this time, this is revolutionary.
Yes.
The sound that came out of that room, Power Station, you, Tony Thompson, I played my early hits. I Don't Want to Play Else Dance With You on that same kit.
Exactly.
That experience of hearing that on those red speakers in the main control room, it is just like revolutionary. And what turned me on even before that was hearing the Chic Good Times record, the sound of the drums. This guy knew how to dial that thing in for drummers to help us have that voice that was like, whoa, we're now powerful in this pop scene.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
And so your Let's Dance and things you did with Clearmountain, like, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
It's mind blowing, and it was an important point in my life because these were kind of life changing moments for me. It's like people were hearing me in these different places almost simultaneously. I'm on the road with Weather Report. That's happening, but then this David Bowie thing happens, and the Dire Straits thing was happening. Then the next year I'm in Sting's band, so it was like a whirlwind of activity.
Yes,
in the mid '80s for me that was almost like. It was just, it blew my mind, to be honest with you.
It
blew my mind, but I was excited, I was happy, and I was ready, actually. I was ready for it.
Yes, brother. I asked about Sting, but guess what? Because we're going so quickly, I have to honor Joe Zawinul, Wayne Shorter, and what you learned in that experience with Weather Report, the Great Weather Report, what you learned in that experience. We have to honor Joe. We have to honor Wayne and you at that time. Tell me what you learned in that experience.
Weather Report, again, another band that I was a fan of. And And once again, that's where I heard you, right? Because you're also part of the Weather Report story. And I'll never forget when the Black Market album came out. I remember taking the record to Marcus Miller's house and I said, yo, you need to listen to this record. And he and I sat in his room together and we listened to Black Market together. And what you played on that album, man, was you and Chester Thompson and Alex Acuna. You know, our minds were blown. And then, of course, after that, the trajectory of Weather Report really went nuts because the next year they put out Heavy Weather, and you know the history. So Weather Report was kind of like a part of my young life too,
Yes.
And so getting the opportunity to play with them was really remarkable for me. There's three people in particular that I have to thank. One of them is the amazing arranger producer Gil Evans.
Wow.
Who
Wow.
produced Miles Davis's Sketches in Spain,
Yes.
among other things. I did my very first tour of Europe with the Gil Evans Big Band in 1981, age 22. The band was Hiram Bullock on guitar.
Love Hiram. Met him in Miami, Florida before he ever came up to New York.
Exactly, man.
He was always bad.
Oh my God. Lou Soloff from Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Yes.
Howard Johnson.
Yes. Tuba.
Tuba, David Sanborn would dip in and out of that band. The amazing Hannibal Marvin Peterson, trumpet. Tony Levin's brother, Peter Levin, on piano, keyboards.
Okay.
Two different bass players, either Tom Barney or, oh God, I could see his face. It was an incredible experience for me as a young musician to go out with this band and tour Europe with a Eurail pass. You know, we would be out there with all of those guys with our suitcases on and the trains. The train pulls in the station. You got to throw all the bags on the train before the train pulls out of the station. It was an incredible tour. But it was Gil Evans when Joe and Wayne called New York looking for a drummer. They called three people. They called Gil. Gil said, "I just took this kid on the road. I think he would be perfect for your band." The second person they called was Michael Urbaniak. Yes. Violinist from Poland.
That's right.
And I just did a record with Mike, and Mike said, "Have you heard this kid, Omar?" The third person was Miles himself. And I was playing at a club in McKell's called, I'm in New York City, called McKell's.
I know McKell's. I played there. I know it. Everybody, that was that small but mighty.
Exactly. And you know, you could be in McKell's, and anybody could walk into McKell's at any moment.
That's right.
It was an incredible hang. A lot of music. I remember one night I was there. Don Blackman and I were actually playing with Hugh Masekela. Don Blackman looks at me and goes, "Omar, isn't that Miles at the bar? It's hat. You see the hat?" And I was like, "Dude, that's Miles, man." Sitting next to James Baldwin.
I love that.
You know, this is who would be hanging out in this club, right? Yes. You know, Stevie Wonder would walk in the door with Chaka Khan in one arm and Beverly Johnson on the other arm.
Yes.
You know, with their whole crew hanging out and having fun.
Yes, that's right.
And I remember Chaka getting on stage jamming with us playing drums.
Beautiful.
It was so much fun, man. But these were beautiful days at McKell's. And so thank God for those three guys. Gil Evans, Michael Urbaniak, and Miles Davis were responsible for getting me in Weather Report. And really, because of their recommendation, they didn't audition me. They were just like, "Who do you want? Who do you want to play with? We need a bass player." "What about your friend Marcus?" they asked me. Well, do you think Marcus would do it? So I asked Marcus about it, but Marcus had already started working with Miles. He was already in Miles' band. So they said, well, think about it. And then I told them about my dear friend, Victor Bailey from Philly.
Right.
And Victor sent them a cassette of him playing Birdland all by himself as a solo piece. And Joe flipped out when he heard that and hired Victor Bailey. And then I also got Jose Rossi on percussion, who I met in the mid 70s because he was a percussionist for LaBelle, Patti LaBelle, Nona Hendrix, and Sarah Dash. And I subbed for their drummer, and that's how I kind of met that crew. In fact, with Eddie Martinez and that crew. So I was like, Jose Rossi is just a badass.
Okay, speak about this. With Joe Zawinul, when it came time for him to solo, he demanded the ride cymbal because he would say in the ride cymbal would be the melodies that he would, pick up on. So you have to definitely play the ride cymbal when it comes time for him to solo. Those type of things. You want to say anything about that?
Absolutely. I remember there were times when Joe would actually move me off the drums and he would show me this ride cymbal concept that he had. Did he? Yes. I don't know if he did that to you.
No, but I know he said, just play the ride cymbal,
He would say, Omar, let me show you something, man. And so and he played this thing. And it's funny because what I realized about it, when I watched him do it, it wasn't what he was playing as much as it was the posture of his body and the lean, because he had a thing that he would do. I need you to play the thing, and he would have this really, and I was like, oh, the attitude, there's an attitude here he's looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that, but he also liked the funk up underneath it. Right? He wanted that feel and that groove and that funk up underneath it, but he wanted that ride cymbal on top. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I could do this blend that you're looking for.
That's right. You sure can.
It's a blend, but I understand it because I understood the language of it. And what we're really talking about is language, right?
But now dig it. Our generation, you, me, like this, we're the cats who had to meld those worlds of the jazz we learned from earlier generation. That's right. Now put the rock on it, put the funk on it, put those other ingredients. That's kind of what the hybrid that came out of our years.
Yes.
At that time.
There's no question about it. And it makes a lot of sense because, when you think about the days of the fusion movement, when Chic and Herbie and Stanley, they were also youngsters.
Yes.
Like, you don't think about it, but they were all like in their 20s, right?
That's right.
So it was like, this was them coming out of the kind of post-bop thing and the convergence of a bunch of new instruments that they could use, the Fender Rhodes, the Mini Moog, the ARP Odyssey. There were, the giant ARP. I forgot the name of that one, but these were new instruments. The Oberheim. They had all these new tools. Mm-hmm. The roll of the drums, the sound being influenced by rock and roll, the power of rock. So it was the music of their youth.
That's right.
And then the evolution of the jazz language into what was happening all around us in the late 60s and early 70s. And so, when I go back and I listen to the Mahavishnu Orchestra, I see very clearly the lines of convergence there, and it makes complete sense to me. Return to Forever, records like Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy. And
oh my God, with Bill Connors on guitar. So magical. To me, my favorite.
Yes.
My favorite.
There was something uber emotional about the way Bill Connors played.
All heart.
Yeah.
Complete heart.
Complete heart. I remember being in the room with them on Bleecker Street. There was a club. Donny Hathaway did a live record at this club. It was a brick wall. What was the name of that club on Bleecker? It's still there. But Return to Forever played at this.
You don't mean the Bottom Line, do you?
No, not the Bottom Line.
Okay.
It's still there. It'll come back to me in a second.
Okay, all right.
But actually, Sass, that band, Jack Sass, we opened for Return to Forever at this club.
Okay.
And I got to see Bill Connors, the first iteration of that band with Lenny and Bill and Stanley, and it was special.
Yeah,
it was like, wow. All I could say is wow. You know, these are the things that stay with you. You know, that shape your musical experiences. You know, they feed you. You know,
we'll speak about that for a second while we're here. We'll go Sting next, but speak about this emotion that we're carrying. The world needs. The world won't know how to ask for it, but it needs it, wants it. The soul of the whole thing. Speak about this soul that you witnessed with you, Connors, all the greats that you love. Joe teaching you how to do that symbol. There's a soul that's coming through. There's a spirit that's coming through. Speak about the music soul coming through.
Well, the soul that comes through is unencumbered by earthly rules. You have to be willing to go down a path that may or may not have already been trodden before. And you have to trust in your exploration that it's almost like you have to be committed to your own discovery and of your journey, to uncover, to discover the discovery of who you are as a person, as a musician, as an artist, as a creative being, and don't feel that you have to do it based on anything that's come before. But you take the information that was there before as inspiration. You know, like my main inspiration comes from seeing people stretch themselves, explore themselves, and allow themselves to kind of have that experience of discovery. You know what I mean? And so in this way, that's how you truly kind of find something original and unique to only you. You know, that like you have to be willing to remove that fear of, well, am I pleasing everyone, or does this work, or does it fit in, or, you know, I just got like Mahavishnu wasn't trying to fit into anything that was happening at that moment. It was so new and so fresh and so different that he came up with a sound that nobody had heard before.
Right.
Return to Forever was a sound that we had never heard before. And that's not to say that it wasn't inspired by what came before.
Right.
But it was certainly unencumbered by the previous rules of what came before. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, each era of the music and generations and what young people bring when they're born, you know, they are bringing an evolution of spirit, of soul, of creativity. And it's beautiful to witness that evolution, and also have the experience too of allowing yourself to be a fearless explorer of ideas.
Omar, I've seen you do it many times. When it comes time for solo, you just epitomize what you've just spoken about, of trusting, letting go, being open to something new to happen. You are so trusting of your spirit that we are witnessing the spontaneous moment of you trusting God, creator, yourself, your body, your mind, your heart, your energy on an adventure. And we witness it with you. I've seen you do that a few times now.
Oh, man.
and also in that film, I got to say, something magic is happening there again that the world saw in the film world. So I'm really proud of you. You're one of the few who's taken the Queens and your dad from Alabama to the world. You're one of the few who's done it.
Wow.
And deservingly so. So I have to really just applaud you for a moment here.
Thank you, man.
These things you've learned, you have so readily shared with us. And that's not easy, but you really do love and trust yourself, and you show us that.
Well, I think we live in a world where people, it's like you said, we're seeing a phenomenal growth of athleticism on a lot of different instruments. And it's really fun because, we all love spectacle and we love to see these like amazing feats of physical prowess, and it's fun, right? It's like, it's really, it's like going to the Olympic Games, man. You love to, you can't take away the fun of that, right? You know what I mean? But then there's something else. And what it is it's what happens when you engage a conversation with the audience that's completely rooted in the moment, in that moment. Like, what happens? I think that the audience can tell and feel when you're playing something you practice or whether you're sharing something.
I got you.
And there's a difference. And sometimes in the sharing of a spontaneous concept, part of the experience is the human struggle. Like people see, well, if I'm going for it, I'm not sure that I'm going to make it necessarily. There's a thing, I feel it. I know it's there. I might make it and I might not, but it doesn't matter, because what they will feel is the intention of that moment. And maybe the intention is more important than me making it, because there's something about it's like the sincerity of trying to say this to you. I'm trying to say this to you. I want you to feel what I'm saying to you. And sometimes you don't always have the words, but you have the emotion in your eyes and the tears, or the smile and the joy. You have all of these other things that you employ in the conversation that are just as important as what you're playing.
Yes. Said very well, brother. Now, let's get on to Sting, because we mentioned him. I want to hear what you learned with Sting. A lot of Sting fans in the world.
Oh, man.
A lot of Sting fans in the world. Come on now.
Sting is such a badass, man.
But what makes him a badass? We love him. From your eyes, from your heart, what makes him a badass?
I like how he deals with many considerations inside of lyrical concepts. Okay. And he will go deep with them, and he will explore them. And he's a phenomenal storyteller. But he's not just a phenomenal storyteller, because he also has the gift of melodic genius.
Yeah.
And he has the gift of harmonic understanding and how to, kind of meld the mood of the lyric with the melody and the music. There's a few writers that do that really well, and those always end up being my favorite writers, like Stevie Wonder and Sting. Even, we were talking about Joe and Wayne, they're not writing words, but they are lyrical in their approach to composition.
Yes.
Right? So Sting has that, right? But then he's a rock and roll musician too, though, at the same time. Like he has this, there's the understanding of that, but then there's also the fact that this dude knows how to rock.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so one of the fun thing, and I felt like it was a good collaboration for us at the time, because of my sort of love of rock and my love of jazz and my love of funk and my love of all of that made that a very good collaboration. Because the Dream of the Blue Turtles I noticed in the press, they were always talking about it as Sting's jazz band, Sting's jazz this thing. But you know what? If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free is not a jazz record, people.
Right, exactly. That's Queens.
That's okay. So
that's how I great TM, man.
So, and the way Donald Jones laid that bass line down,
yeah, that's right,
and the way that pocket unfolded in the studio, don't deny it. That was a pop funk vibe, and I remember hearing it in some dance clubs while we were on the road. Especially the remixes were a lot of fun to hear how some of the remixes would take If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free and kind of do a take on it. But it was a lot of fun, man. I think that, Sting was ready to kind of open up his musical experience. And I think that first crew that he got of Kenny Kirkland on keyboards.
Yes.
And the incredible, phenomenal Kenny Kirkland. Darryl Jones, Branford Marsalis.
That's right.
I mean, that was the right band to go on that musical adventure with, I think.
Janice singing background.
Janice Pendar and Dolette McDonald.
That's right. And also it was a breakout on SNL, Saturday Night Live. That song. That was a breakout. That was a breakout, man.
It was so fun. These were fun days, man.
Yeah.
But I was thrilled to be a part of it because I love Sting, and I love the Police, and just fun days of making that record in we made that record in Barbados, actually.
Okay.
You remember Eddie Grant?
Yes, of course. Walking on Sunshine. Yeah. Electric Avenue. Yeah. And then we take it higher. Yeah, man.
All right. So it was his studio. And I have these wonderful memories because Sting didn't want to record early in the day. Early part of the day was like the beach, the water, swimming. We wouldn't get together and start playing music until after sundown. So there were days on the beach. But then I remember kind of being on the farm with Eddie. And it was a sugarcane farm. It was like the studio was in this barn, but then it's like a giant farm. And Eddie, I'm sitting on a tractor with him in that sugarcane field, and he's teaching me how to cut the sugar canes and eat sugar cane, and we're just sitting there. And these are just incredible memories for me of hanging with him and making that record in Barbados.
Beautiful.
Really, really fun times, man.
Beautiful. Well, on my head, I'm wearing a Journey hat. It says Journey and kind of like the broke down version. Neil gave it to me, and I know you spent time with Journey. We both have. Anything you want to say about working with Journey on behalf of Neil and the Cats?
Love those guys, man. It's funny because I mentioned Lenny White playing on a Santana album back in the day.
Yes.
I want to say, if my memory serves me correct, that it was maybe Santana 3. Okay. And this was the first record, I believe. Again, I might be wrong, but I'm going to go out on a limb here. I want to say that Santana 3 might be the first record Neil Schon played on with Santana. And so I remember being with my cousin, who was a big rock fan, and we're listening to this record. And I said to him, listen to that guitar player right there. Mm-hmm. That's not Carlos. Mm-hmm. That's somebody else. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, Carlos Santana's the guitar. I said, no, man, that guitar right there. Play it, run it back. You pick up the needle and go back. That guitar, that sound is a different sound. So we look at the album cover. We're like detectives now. We're looking, and I see the name for the first time, Neil Schon Guitar. Mm-hmm. And I was like, who is that guy? Because that's blazing right there. Whoever that dude is, that's like a...
For me, it was a similar experience, but I think it was an album that was done in the volcano of Hawaii with Buddy Miles, and a solo that Neil took with Carlos and Buddy.
Right,
similar experience.
Yeah,
you knew that wasn't Carlos now.
That Carlos,
it was another voice, but just as dirt funky as it comes, and it was Neil.
And it was Neil Schon. And so I finally saw on TV something, might have been like Don Kirshner's rock concert or one of those kind of rock concert shows that would be on in the 70s. And I was like, that must be that guy. He looks so young. Like, he's not that much older than me. That's what I thought when I saw him. You know, I was like, wow, who is that must be Neil Schon. And so I noticed him, and I was drawn to the way he played.
Yes.
As a teenager. I was like, that dude right there is badass.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you know, the story of how they formed Journey, and I was kind of paying attention to it. And my first experience, actually, somebody called me when I was done with Sting and said, Journey's looking for a drummer. So I went out and in 1986 or whatever, and I auditioned. And it was funny because I knew a lot of the songs already. And they were really surprised. We weren't able to make it happen. I couldn't join them for the tour at that time. I think I was working on a TV show with David Sanborn called Night Music.
I know it. Beautiful show.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on the Sanborn thing. But Neil and I became friends. Mm-hmm. And then I every now and then he would call me to help him out with a solo project or whatever. And so that must have been 2015. They had a little emergency situation come up, and then I ended up jumping in on their tour in 2015. We did some dates in Canada. It was primarily a Canadian tour with a few, like a half dozen American dates that were really amazing. So I got a chance to experience hanging out with those guys and playing those amazing songs, and actually witnessing Arnell just nailing those vocals every night, and Neil playing his face off, and John Cain, and you know, I mean, these guys, they're God bless them, man. They're a special band, and they've made some special music over the years. So it was fun to have that opportunity to hang. And I know you just did it recently, didn't you?
I did a double album called Freedom during COVID.
Yes.
And yeah, and that was very, very cool experience. And I did about 9 shows.
Yeah,
9 shows, and then I came back home, and I'm needed in my home with my children. I've got 10-year-old Kelly, a 9-year-old Kayla, and a 5-year-old Michael. So I got to be home daddy. But yeah, it's all good, man. And also, I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of Steve Smith with the Journey band, and what he's put down. And when you try to sit, you know, play the things he's played, it's incredible. That amount of it's staggering. Staggering amount of music coming down, man.
No, it's a very special attention to detail.
Yeah,
and an inventiveness.
Yes,
that it plays on the surface as something simple, but there's an undercurrent complexity,
right,
that makes it interesting. And so I had a friend, he used to say, well, we call this a simplexity. It's a simplex concept. Yeah. And so he's a master of simplicity. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, I really appreciate that about Stephen. We just celebrated with Zildjian last year a Hall of Fame thing. I don't know if you saw that with Dennis.
No, but I love it.
And the Zildjian family honored us with this lovely celebration last year. So I got a chance to hang out with Steve and Dennis Chambers and Peter Erskine and Sheila E. And it was just so fun to be with those guys and reminisce about all of the special music that all these people have made, you know?
Beautiful, brother.
Yeah.
Now, let us know about this new album you got. Let us know about that. Say anything you want to say.
Well, at the end of 2022, I sat down in a chair by the fireplace, and because I had some lyric ideas, and I sat down at about like 9:30, and it turned out to be an all-night writing session. And this is the first time anything like this ever happened to me, where I sat down at 9:30 and I didn't get up until 5:30 out of that chair.
Oh, okay.
And what was happening was one lyric idea after the next. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit here until this stops.
Okay.
I'm not going to get up until this stops.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to let it keep happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would write a title concept down. Then the hook came. And then I said, oh, well, let's talk about this idea. And then the verses started coming. Then I put that one away. Then by the time I was done, I had written 9 songs. Not music, though. Just lyrics.
Beautiful.
Just lyric concepts.
Beautiful.
Over the next 2 months, uh, January, February 2023, I sat down and I recorded 8 or 9 songs. And this time I was exploring, the approach was kind of coming from the funk rock music of my childhood. Like when I think about Sly and the Family Stone, and I think about Hendrix, and I think about also, the Beatles, not rock funk, but, beautiful melodic pop rock music. When I thought about the band Mother's Finest, I don't know if you remember Mother's Finest.
Yes.
Earth, Wind and Fire. Like I started thinking about that blend of funk and rock that I loved so much. And I hadn't been playing guitar in a while, but I was like, I want to dust the guitar up again. And I started hearing these riffs. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to overthink this. As they come, I'm just going to record them. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting about the process, I didn't sit down immediately and play drums. But what I did was, so that I could get to the idea fast, I just beatboxed the grooves into a microphone right away, so that I didn't have to get into setting up mics or programming. So if I heard a beat, I would just beatbox it and sometimes I would beatbox it to a click. And then I would make a loop of that. And then I would pick up my guitar and play along with that, because I knew I could always go back and add drums to this later. Right. But I just want to get to the ideas as fast as I can, unfiltered. Don't overthink this, right? And by February, I had 8 songs finished.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And then we started to go around. I had an agent that was trying to see if a label would get on board with us. But then, you know how that is. It's a different world right now, and social media is king, and all of that. It's a whole different vibe. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to call this an Omar Hakim record. Instead, what I'm going to do is I am going to just create a vehicle for this. And I decided to call it Sonic Boom Squad. And just start having fun putting out a song at a time. And just vibe it and just set them out into the world and see who discovers them and see who connects with them. And it's been really interesting because I'm sensing that there is they're getting their own momentum in the world right now, these songs. Yeah. And right now there's 3 songs out. The first one is called, it came out in March. It's called The Thread Between Us.
Right. Okay.
Now The Thread Between Us was one of the songs on the forthcoming record that actually wasn't written in that sit down. And The Thread Between Us was a poem that I wrote 30 years ago. And I would pull this poem out. There was a piece of paper, and every now and then I find it, I look at it, and I say, I don't hear music for this yet, but one day I need to put music to this. And then I put the paper back in the box. And then another time I typed it into my computer so that I would have it in case I lost the paper. But I was like, this is an important message. And then that when I pulled it out that time, I heard music for it for the first time.
Okay.
And for me, the thread between us was me talking about the oneness of all the souls on planet Earth and how we are more connected than people actually realize. Like we want to act like and operate as if we are separate.
Yes. But
the truth of the matter is that the organism of life on Earth and universal mind, yes, and how creative communication and how creative ideas are exchanged in the ether and in the kind of the spiritual network. I wanted to discuss that. And so I called it The Thread Between Us. The hook is, there's a thread between us that's there to join us. Our hearts, our souls, and minds. It's the thread between us that's there to remind us that our love is tailor-made. It's our time. That's the hook. Those are the words to the hook. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to make the analogy between a tailor and the thread and the fabric of life, mm-hmm. and how we are all joined together by this fabric.
That's beautiful. There you go. That's right.
You know?
That's right.
Well, through the eye of a needle, I see the light in your skies. Unravel my mind so I can know you and the fabric that is my life. Wrap my heart in all your splendor and let me feel its warmth all around me. Mold my soul and weave this life into what it could be, because now I see there's a thread between us.
There you go. That's it.
So that was the poem that I wrote like 30 years ago.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you for that.
And so I was able, so for the first time I heard music for that, and that's what happened with that, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I heard, it was almost like the Walk 6/8 thing happened, you know. And you know how this is when the creative moment comes, you just have to go with it. You just have to let it, you just have to go with it, you know. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that the process of this Sonic Boom Squad project was really fun for me. The second single is the title song from the album. It's called Come Out to Play. Okay. And that was the first rocker. So I started with a ballad. I led with a ballad in the releases, but the next one, Come Out to Play, is a rocker. And the idea is like, there's a lot of distraction in the world. Like there's like social media and crazy stuff happening in the news, and everywhere you look, there's like all this like insane activity all the time. And if you're not careful, you can get pulled this way, then you can get pulled that way. And you can sometimes get pulled into spaces where you even doubt yourself and what you're doing and your perspective, you know? And so the basic underlying message of Come Out to Play is that no matter what you're looking at out there, do not stop yourself from having the experience of you.
Right. That's it. That's right.
Have that experience no matter what you're looking at, because it's true. It looks a little wacky sometimes, you know. The verses are really funny because I tried to write it in a way where it expressed the all over the placedness of everything. A clown with a microphone up on a platform and nothing really useful to say. A doctor with a scalpel in his hand with no one around to save. It's a pity, a pretty girl dressed up for the world with no place to really go. You know, change your mind and, you know, and plant the seeds to watch nothing grow. I did the math. I spent the cash, and we might get what we needed, you know. And I'm taking you through this whole thing of like, well, what the heck is going on here? But I'm like, but wait, come out to play. Don't turn away. Don't turn away. If you promise to stay, don't turn away. Just come out to play. Don't turn away, no matter what may. Mm-hmm. We'll show you the way. If you promise not to fly away, just come out to play. Yeah.
All right. Come
on out to play.
All right.
You know, and so you know, so I wanted to have fun with this idea of staying in the game.
Beautiful, man. Very beautiful.
You know, of staying in the game and staying true to yourself, even though sometimes stuff is exploding around you and you're not really always sure and you're feeling a little doubtful about where you are. Everybody has these moments.
You need to see the new movie, maybe you have seen it, called Inside Out 2, where they explore the brain and what's going on inside of our brains and the different characters in our brains and moving things around, and then how anxiety takes over and tries to rule the roost. So it's really a phenomenal movie, kind of like what your song is about. All these things going on, but then we don't want to forget who we really are. And you need to go see it. I saw it last night, but it's reminding me of what you're saying.
And what's it called again?
Inside Out 2. It's Pixar.
I'm going to check that out,
Yeah,
man.
you'll love it. It's really well done.
No, it's funny because the album, when I really look back, as I think about what I was writing about, I was writing about this quite a bit on a few songs. Like even the latest one, which came out a few days ago, is called Only You.
Okay.
But the subtitle is The Grace of Love.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Wow.
Only You, The Grace of Love. And this song, I decided I wanted to write about people that are struggling with addiction and different things in the family. Like I even had this in my family. My dad was a freaking mad genius, but he was also struggling with drugs from time to time. Okay. And so there were moments in my young life where he wasn't always available. Okay. Right? And so when I started thinking about how we get affected by loved ones who we rely on, who we really love and care for, and it really kind of freaks us out when we see them going off the rails a little bit, and we get very concerned. And sometimes we even get angry, not at them as much as the situation. Why do we have to be in this? I love you so much. Why are we doing this? And so sometimes we start asking ourselves about these things, and we're trying to manage the experience of people dealing with their disappointment in the world, and people, like you say, we're trying to navigate this thing, trying to stay connected to who we are as human beings, but still manage the mental state, and so this song, I decided to write about the pain and then the transformation. And by the end of the song, I started off with the question, why?
Yes.
But then in the end, I dealt with the transformation, which is the grace of love.
The Grace of Love. That's a great title for your song and for your album and for life and for your book. You make a book, brother. Your story. You from the humble beginnings of Queens and all the things you learned from 1959. The Grace of Love on up. Make your book, brother. Your story is a powerful one, and I know that you will do that one day. Yeah, you really need to. You really need to. And I have two more things I want to say before we get off. One thing is coming to my mind because you're born 1959. Yeah, it's an album that changed my life from 1959. It's the live album of Ray Charles. Oh yeah, recorded in Atlanta. I know this. The record. Drummer, the album is just perfect.
Who's the drummer on that record?
Don't even know. I never knew, but I carried it in the snow with me in Michigan. And played it all the time, but never saw the personnel on the back of who was actually playing.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm telling you, that year that you're born changed things. Also, that Nina Simone album, Live in Town Hall, 1959. There's a lot of 1959 that just changed the world.
Dude, Kind of Blue, Miles Davis,
exactly. 1959. Exactly. So I have to say that about 59 because I'm born 52. So 59 was revolutionary. Because now, we heard Little Richard now. We've heard rock and roll.
Exactly.
We heard, exactly. I mean, on a 78, Little Richard was like little Long Tall Sally and whatever, little Tutti Frutti. S70 was rock and roll.
Exactly.
So I'm saying you came at the cosmic boom. You give it the cosmic boom, man.
And I have very distinct memories of that.
Yeah.
Because I remember being super young with my Aunt Maggie, doing the twist with her. She was like, "Come on, boy, let's do the twist together." Okay. So we do that, doing that. And my cousins having parties, and it was all Motown. Oh, every record was a Motown record. You know what I mean?
Detroit, so deep.
Detroit,
so deep, man.
And I remember just hearing that music as a kid, like I said, it was an interesting time to be a kid because my brain was exploding with all of this information.
Yes, brother.
Between the jazz and the soul music and the R&B and the rock and roll. And I was sponging it all, and it was all going in, it was all seeping in, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that has definitely shaped my musical brain. That coming into that time period, it's like, you know, radio wasn't segregated like that back then.
Mm-hmm,
I remember turning on the radio and hearing the Delphonics, the Beatles, Earth, Wind and Fire, Sly Stone, and the Jefferson Airplane on the same station. And Humble Pie, thrown in for good measure. You know what I mean? Like you could hear all of this music on one station.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, you got to fit into this, and then you got to fit into this, and then you got to fit into this, you know, and then so now kids don't get a chance to experience this other language, culture, perspective. You know what I mean? And all it does is divide us up more.
Yes, that's right.
It divides us up mentally and spiritually and everything.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
You know, so that's where I'm coming from, I guess, with the Sonic Boom Squad thing. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have fun creating from this place.
So let me say it again. Sonic Boom Squad. Everybody on our podcast, check it out. The Sonic Boom Squad with the genius here, Omar Hakim. Omar, I have to also thank you for the time we spent together. We played the House of Congress with Carly Simon.
Yes.
The cat on the piano who wrote all those great Pixar themes, Randy Newman. Another genius, Jimmy Webb was there.
It was so fun.
Doing the Wichita Lineman, whatever he played, MacArthur Park.
That's right.
And it was just a wonderful gathering, you know, and I want to really thank you.
Wasn't that incredible, man?
It really was. So I want to thank you for that too, you know.
Oh, and thank you.
And then on my soul is I got to say something about this because I know I want to honor him. Do you have anything you can say about Mr. Raymond Gomez, the guitarist from New York, who Lenny brought on the scene? And I worked for the White Knight Garden Love Light album. Do you have any crossings with Raymond Gomez?
No, not a lot. I do remember seeing you playing at the Bottom Line when the Garden of Love Light record came out. I remember, I don't know if you remember, but I came to that gig and he was there that day with TM and you guys, and it was Corrado on the gig too, maybe?
No, on that gig would have been Pat Thrall. That band was actually Pat Thrall guitar, TM Stevens. Yeah.
TM, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Killer. But I would run into him occasionally. I didn't know him really well, but I was certainly blown away by his work.
Yes.
I just thought he was a fabulous player.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
Yes. Lenny did such a great thing to bring him to the world. And at a time when Mahavishnu Orchestra was kind of closing down a bit from my experience of being able to play with them, I needed another guitarist to lock onto. And that became Raymond Gomez for me because he understood blues, the rock, the Hendrix, all that. But he also had the mind, the spirit, the soul, the genius to do the fusionary world and pioneer in the fusionary world. So it was a great handle for me to grab onto. And didn't
he also play on School Days?
Yes, he did with Stanley Clarke and Wore It Out Live with Stanley. Many shows. Yeah. So I thought you may have had some crossings with him, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not enough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Omar Hakim, listen, man. I'm here for you, Narada Michael Walden. Our show is called All In. I've been looking forward to speaking with you for a while. I heard you played a concert not far down the road. Some of my friends came and were just turned out by you recently. Some place down there near Carmel or Monterey or somewhere down there.
We played Half Moon Bay.
That's Half Moon Bay.
We played Half Moon Bay. It was actually
my friends got back and said, "Man, he just blew it out." I was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh man. Well, actually, the tour was for my wife's record, Rachel Z, for your podcasters.
Yeah,
she's an amazing keyboard player. We worked with Wayne Shorter.
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel's keyboard player for many years.
Yeah.
And I just produced a lovely acoustic record for her. I've been telling her, Rachel, you gotta make another acoustic piano record. Your touch on acoustic piano is just so special. And we have this beautiful piano here at our studio. Let's record it. Let's like make a record, right? So after like many years of begging her to do this, we finally made it happen, and we got Mino Senelu to play on half the record. Not drum set, but just percussion, upright bass, and acoustic piano. So half the record is Mino, which I love that because it created a lot of space for the piano in a very different way from everything being drum set and piano. And then the other part of the record is myself on drums. And we have 3 different bass players on the record helping us out. The amazing Tony Levin.
Yes.
We also have our longtime bass player for the trio is John Toscano.
Okay.
And actually, it was John who's been on tour with us.
Okay.
So if you see Rachel Z, the trio project called Sensual come through town, come through and see it. It's beautiful music, and she's playing beautiful, and it's so much fun. And it's actually fun for me to kind of get back to my really jazzy roots, because with her thing, I'm actually kind of revisiting more of a bebop approach to playing, you know?
Congratulations to Rachel and you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you've been together for a while, right?
Yeah, we got married in 2010, but I've known her a lot longer. We've been friends and did record dates and different things, but we didn't connect romantically until like the late 2000s. And then after that, we've been inseparable.
Congratulations. You mentioned Tony Levin. I got to say one thing about him, because I did one session with him, which I really loved. It was Robert Fripp, who met me at McHale's. King Crimson, asked me to play a track called Breathless. And when I get there, it's Tony Levin on the bass. So it's a trio. And that guy is really a monster. So when you mention his name, I have to tell you that. I know that guy is really a monster, man.
Oh, no, he's an incredible musician. In fact, we went to see Gabriel's gig in Philly a few months ago, and it was incredible. It's nice to see Manu Katché and those guys. Man, but yeah, Tony he's a special guy, man. Really just incredible musician.
Well, Omar, we're here for you, man.
Thank you.
Love you. I love my time with you today, and you made time for us. Yeah. And I just want to really put a lot of gas in your tank, because you are really the real deal. And I'm so proud that you were raised in New York and can tell the New York stories. The world needs more of this. Where it came from, how it came, how it developed, how it became this thing that we're still exploring.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Love you, Omar.
Love you too, brother, man.
Genius of Love. What's that? What's the Grace of Love? The Grace of Love.
The Grace of Love. Yes.
Your new book, The Grace of Love.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, man.
Okay. Thank you so much for listening to our All In podcast. If you enjoy the show, please follow, like, and subscribe on our socials: YouTube, Official Narada Instagram, Official Narada, one word, and All In with Narada Michael Walden on Apple Music, Spotify, and more. Thank you so very much.